folks, Lee here, and what I'm going to show you over the next series of videos, I think, are the fundamentals of music theory applied to the guitar. I really want to show you loads of other musical theoretical bits and pieces, you know, something like substitution, extended chords, you know, some of the more exotic scales and how they all intertwine with each other. But before I do that, I really need to kind of ensure you've got all the fundamentals you need as a bedrock to all of that. So this series of short videos is really designed just to help you understand 3 or 4 key principles, really, the big bangs of music theory that lots of musicians understand, and you can apply this not just to the guitar but to absolutely any instrument that utilises the 12 semitone row. So these videos in short are going to help you to understand what a major scale is, how to build chords and how chords are built from the major scale, and therefore how all chords work together so you're able to create songs. And then taking that a step further, how you extend those chords into 7ths and 9ths and 11ths and 13ths, and then also how the modes fit into all of that. I'm going to keep it very short and sweet on each section and try and explain it in as much detail as possible without getting bogged down in lots and lots of the theoretical stuff. Okay, so first things first then. One of the big things I learned quite late on, really, after playing for years around chords and twiddling about with scales and bits and pieces. I wasn't sure how it all fitted together, and my journey around music theory was really around hearing people play with modes, and I had no idea what was going on with that. I thought, are they playing a major scale or is it some kind of blues scale? I didn't know what was happening. So this was the days before the internet, and I used to go to the library and get books and kind of read through reams and reams and reams of material, trying to pick out the little bits of information that I need. And I don't think today is any different. I think the internet is a wonderful thing, and it's filled with, you know, tons of information. But the problem is you don't exactly know which bits of information you need, and then you've got to be able to find it throughout all of the dross that's out there. And there's obviously a lot of bad advice as well. So I went in search of information around what was happening with some of my favourite songs, and it turned out that it was the modes. It was the modes of the major scale, and I knew how to play the major scale, you know, the do. I could play guitar, I just didn't know what was going on, you know, in between those notes, and how to harmonise those notes into chords and all of that sort of stuff. So that's the information I was looking at, and I sort of distilled it into 3 or 4 key parts, which I've then gone on to teach a lot of people, to save them having to do the same monstrous trawls through the internet or through books themselves. So I'm going to show you those now, and the first one is the chromatic scale. Now this isn't a scale that you have to kind of whiz about playing, it's just about understanding where it comes from and how to apply it. I think the history of the chromatic scale is quite interesting, so bear with me on this. In the Dark Ages, musicians and music was definitely in the hands of performers. So people would know a certain song that they could play on their particular instrument, and then they would teach that to their sons or daughters and pass that down through the generations. And what would happen is that music would change over time, as almost like Chinese whispers. Someone would put something slightly different into a melody, or the chords would be slightly different, or even the tunings would pass down, because there were no standard tunings. So that meant certain instruments wouldn't play well with each other either. And there were a myriad of different stringed instruments around. Then along came a clever chap called Bach. And Bach decided to get rid of all this nonsense about, you know, I can't tune to you and you can't tune to me, and I play it this way and you play it that way, and this is a C, no it's not, this is a C. And he said, right, that's it, I'm going to have a unified method by which you can tune every instrument together, and we're going to define the spaces between those notes as well. And he called it equal temperament. And you can see this now on the guitar, that we have frets, and these frets harmonically are equidistant, so they're of equal distance apart. And those distances on a guitar are a semitone. So if we start with the first note here, which is an E, and then I play the next fret, which is an F, that's a semitone apart, and so on and so forth. And there are 12 semitones. On a piano you can see this by the white and black keys going up and down. Each one of those is a semitone apart. So what did this mean? Why did he bother? Well, like I said to you before, all of music was in the hands of performers up until that point. But once it was in a kind of mathematical formula that could be defined, and there was a standard way of tuning and a standard way for notes to fit together, it opened a whole new world of possibilities, which were exploited by people like Bach himself, by people like Mozart who did it beautifully, and then later with Beethoven, etc., etc., all the way through to the Spice Girls. So it took music out of the hands of performers and actually into the hands of composers, who were then able to kind of not necessarily be able to play all the instruments, but they knew the sounds of them, they knew how all this music and this mathematics fitted together, and were able to dream big. So if you now wind forward in history to modern day, everything in Western music is built from these 12 notes. I mean, this is absolutely everything from ABBA to Zappa, from AC/DC to Zeppelin to the Spice Girls, as I mentioned a minute ago, to Steve Vai. Absolutely everything, and almost every genre of music that utilises Western harmony has been created from these 12 semitones, which is amazing. So these 12 semitones are worth knowing, and once you get to grips with them, they're going to help you in many different ways. They're going to help you to be able to find notes on the guitar, it's going to help you to find chords really easily, and really just understand what this map looks like. Okay, so enough about that. What are they? Well, rather than thinking about it as in a linear way of starting at point A and getting all the way through to point B and then stopping, think of the chromatic scale as a circle. And if you start anywhere on that circle, you can go in any direction in semitone steps. On the screen now you can see that I've written it out for you. And we've started with C, and we're going to work our way through. So we've got C, C sharp D, D sharp E, F, F sharp G, G sharp A sharp B, and then C. Which sounds a little bit complicated, but the best way to think about it is it's the alphabet. It's simply the alphabet up to G, and everything has a sharp after it unless it's between E and F and B and C. Something else to point out there, some people might be going, well, yeah, okay, there's sharps, what about these flats that I've heard about? Well, sharps and flats can be the same thing in terms of what they sound like. They can just be written in a different way. So to keep it really simple for you, I'm doing everything in sharps. Let me give you an example. If I was playing F, for instance, which is that note, and I wrote F flat, that technically is F flat, but as you can see, there is no F flat, it's an E. So F flat is the same as E, although it would be written different. It would be an F with a flat next to it. It sounds the same as E. Another example would be C sharp. You can see C sharp is written up there. There's C sharp. C sharp is the same as D flat. There's C and C sharp, D and D flat. So C sharp and D flat are the same note. They sound the same, they're just written differently, and this comes into actually writing musical notation, which we're not going to talk about today anyway. So for now, I'm keeping it all in sharps, and these notes, these crossover notes between sharps and flats, the same notes, are called enharmonic equivalents. So the chromatic scale is on your screen, and it's from C all the way through to C again, because once it gets around to B, we're back to C. The distance between each one of those individual notes is called a semitone, and that's important to remember, because a semitone on the guitar is one fret. And the distance between two steps in the scale, perhaps between C and D, is a tone. And that goes the other way around as well, so the distance between D and C, walking backwards, is also a tone. And on the guitar, that's 2 frets. So that's the chromatic scale. You don't necessarily have to play it. It's not a scale that we, utilise a lot in terms of running the entire scale. you'll see chromatic passages, or may have heard the term chromatic passages when you're playing, playing solos and things like that. And that just means that you are running up or filling in the blanks between intervals on a scale in semitonal intervals, something like that. There's a chromatic passage. You do want to play the chromatic scale, and it's a really good technical exercise as well. What you do is you allocate a finger to a fret on the guitar, and we'll start on C, because that's the example we've got on the screen now, and we're going to allocate a finger to a fret, and it sounds like this. Okay, so we're going up a semitone, a fret at a time, and I'm just alternate picking that, but it doesn't matter, you need to hear the sounds. Okay, and then the next set of notes is the same pattern on the string below, a fret lower. Okay, and it carries on in that same pattern until you get to the second thinnest string, which is the B, at which point you don't drop down a fret, you just stay on the same fret. Okay, and then you drop down a fret onto the E string. Sounds complicated, it really isn't. Here's a close-up. And you can play that scale starting anywhere in that pattern, any note, and you don't have to play it. That's just one way of getting around the notes. You can start on E, and so on and so forth. It doesn't matter. It's just showing you how to play all the notes on the guitar. So what does the chromatic scale mean to guitar players? And why is it useful? Well, on the guitar, like I said to you before, each semitone in that chromatic scale is divided up on the frets of the guitar. So if you know your open notes, if you know what they are, let's say for instance E, then you can run around the chromatic scale in any direction and you'll know the names of the notes on that string. So if we start at E in the chromatic scale and move our way along, we've got E, then we've got F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E. You can see we've got back down to E again. And on the guitar, there are 2 dots. That defines where the octave is, because there are 12 frets, as in 12 notes in the chromatic scale, 12 frets on the guitar. So that's really simple. So if I wanted to know where A was on the E string, I could go, well, I know this is an E, and I could move my way up, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A. And this is where the dots come in on a guitar, because these are reference points. So I know, and I learned fairly quickly, that where the dots were specific notes that I could remember. And I started on the E string, and I knew that this was a G, at the 3rd fret, where the first dot was. In fact, it made a lot of sense, because one of the first chords you ever learn is a G, and that where your second finger sits, the bass note, is a G. So if you look at it, E, F, F sharp, G. Okay, G, G sharp, A. So I learned that the next dot along was A. And then the next dot after that is B, and the next one was C sharp. And the beauty of learning it in that way was that I didn't have to start at E and work my way along anymore. I could go, well, I need G sharp. Well, I know where G is, so that's G sharp. Or I need F sharp. Well, I know where G is, so I'll go backwards to F sharp. See what I mean? And you can apply that to every single string on the guitar. So start with your E, try and get your head around what notes are on which dot for the E string, and then have a look at A. Go, well, that's an open A sharp, B, C. And you think that makes sense as well, because a real common chord to start with is a C major. And that note's a C, A sharp, B, C. So that helps you find notes on the guitar, and those notes then help you to find the beginnings of chords, particularly if you've got to the point where you can play bar chords, because that's going to help you to be able to move those round. Once you understand one major and one minor bar chord, you can technically play every single chord from every single major scale key without extensions, which basically means you can play pretty much any song ever created from Western music in its most fundamental form. So if I've got a major bar chord shape and I'm starting at E major, for instance, there's E major, open E, the nut of the guitar is taking care of that bar for me. So if I want to move that chord up from E to F, for instance, I need to replace that bar. I move everything else up, but I need to replace that bar. So I change my fingering around, I put the finger across all the strings, that creates the bar, and there's my F. And then I move up F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B. These are all major. So if I was looking in a book, if maybe I'd gone on the internet, or a friend has said the chord for the song you want to play is B major, I could go, right, well, I know E major, I'm going to move it up until I know where find B. So how do I find B? Well, E, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, and there's my B. So I play it in that way. Or maybe I've used my reference point, because I know that's A sharp, B. I play my chord there. So you understand the chromatic scale, you know how to apply it to the guitar, and you've got some understanding of how useful it is to you. The next key piece of music theory, the next big bang if you like, is the major scale.